Okay, so
Yeah.
I want you to picture a Venn diagram for a second.
Mm-hmm.
In the left circle, you've got a devout, Bible-thumping Sunday school teacher. And, I mean, we're talking about a guy who reads the scriptures once for every single year of his life. A total literalist.
Someone who takes the text very, very seriously. No wiggle room.
Exactly. And then in the right circle, you have the single biggest source for the concept of reincarnation in the entire Western world.
Right.
Now, in my head, and probably in the heads of most people listening, those two circles, they do not touch. They're miles apart. But today, we're talking about the man who lived right in that tiny little sliver of overlap. We are diving into the files of Edgar Cayce.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? Cayce is usually known as the sleeping prophet.
Yeah.
Most people know him for the medical stuff.
Yeah.
You know, putting himself into a trance to diagnose illnesses, recommending castor oil packs, that sort of thing. But the stack of notes we're looking at today isn't about liver flushes or spinal adjustments.
No, this is the life readings.
Right. About 2,500 of them. And this is the data that completely upended Cayce's own worldview.
Yeah.
Is the material that, frankly, terrified him.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're not just telling ghost stories here. We're looking at a specific data set that claims to explain why we're here. We're going to look at how a Christian traditionalist accidentally stumbled into past lives, the mechanics of why we supposedly forget them, and this is the part I'm really trying to wrap my head around, we'll look at the case studies.
The practical application.
Yeah. How your career, your chronic health issues, and even that one person you just cannot stand might actually be, well, old news.
Old news is a very polite way of putting it.
Yeah.
Karmic baggage might be a little more accurate.
Okay, so let's start with the accidental discovery, because I think it's important to frame this correctly. This wasn't some career move for Cayce. He didn't just wake up, buy a crystal ball, and decide to be a guru.
Oh, far from it. In fact, he actively avoided anything that smelled like the occult. This all starts in a hotel room in Dayton, Ohio. The date is August 10th, 1923.
Okay.
Cayce is there with a wealthy printer named Arthur Lammers. Now, Lammers is the complete opposite of Cayce. He's into metaphysics, theosophy, Eastern religion, all the stuff Cayce usually avoided at all costs.
But Cayce is there to give a medical reading, right? I mean, that was his whole thing.
Well, Lammers pulled a bit of a bait and switch. He asked for a reading, but he didn't want a diagnosis for, like, a backache or an ulcer. He wanted a horoscope. He wanted to know about his astrological chart.
Which, for a fundamentalist Christian in 1923, is already pushing it.
Definitely. But Cayce goes under. He enters this sleep state, this self-induced trance he used for diagnosis. And while he's under, seemingly bypassing all of his conscious objections, he tosses out a phrase that just changes the entire trajectory of his life.
What's the phrase?
He starts talking about past lives as a cold, hard fact. Just describes Lammers' previous incarnations so casually, as if you were reading a resume.
And then he wakes up.
And the stenographer reads it back to him. And Cayce is absolutely horrified. You have to understand, to his waking mind, this wasn't some brilliant insight. It was heresy. He actually felt like his subconscious had been hijacked. He wondered if he was possessed by evil forces. He was ready to quit. He basically said, if my gift is going to play tricks on me like this, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
So how does he get past that? I mean, he obviously didn't quit, or we wouldn't have 2,500 readings to look at today. How does a guy like that reconcile reincarnation with his Sunday stir lessons?
It took some convincing and quite a bit of theological gymnastics. Lammers and a few others helped him reframe the terminology. They argued that what came through the reading wasn't transmigration.
Okay, stop there. What's the difference?
Transmigration is the idea you sometimes find in some Eastern traditions where you might come back as, like, a cow or a bug or even a tree, depending on how you live.
Right.
Cayce's readings never supported that. They framed it strictly as the evolution of the human soul. They called it the law of grace.
The law of grace. That sounds a lot more palatable to a churchgoer.
Exactly. Essentially, the soul, or what Cayce was called the entity, enters the earth plane, not to be punished, but to learn. It's here to balance the patterns it created in previous chapters. It's all framed as a sort of Christian evolution. You're working toward a perfected state.
So it's a classroom, not a prison.
Precisely. A classroom where you just keep repeating the grade until you finally pass the final exam.
Okay, but here is the immediate objection. And I think this is the first thing anyone asks when they hear about this concept. If this is a classroom and we're here to learn from our mistakes, why don't I remember the mistakes?
It seems like a massive design flaw, doesn't it?
It seems so counterintuitive. If I don't know what I did wrong last time, how am I supposed to fix it this time? It feels like taking a test with a blindfold on.
The readings actually address this head-on, and they use some really beautiful analogies to explain why forgetting is actually a feature, not a bug. The first one is the deep sea diver.
Okay, walk me through that one.
Okay, so imagine the soul is a diver standing on the deck of a ship. That deck is the spirit world. The sun is shining, the air is clear, you can see the horizon, you know exactly who you are, you know your history, you feel light. But you have a specific job to do underwater. So you have to put on the suit,
The physical body.
the physical body. And you have to remember, Cayce is speaking in the 1920s and 30s, so we're talking about those old-school diving suits.
Oh yeah, the big copper helmets.
Exactly. Heavy canvas, lead-weighted boots, a massive helmet bolted onto your shoulders. You jump overboard and you sink down into the murky depths.
And suddenly, you're not thinking about the sunshine anymore.
You can't. The pressure is immense. The currents are fighting you. It's dark. Down on the ocean floor, which is Earth in this analogy, your entire focus just narrows to two things: surviving and doing the immediate task in front of you. You forget the freedom of the deck because the environment you're in is just so demanding.
So the amnesia isn't a rule, it's more like a byproduct of the pressure.
Partially. But there's a second analogy that implies the amnesia is actually necessary for us to function at all. And it involves the actor Laurence Olivier.
That is specific.
Very specific. The readings use this theater comparison. So suppose Laurence Olivier is about to go on stage to play Othello. To give a perfect performance, he has to completely immerse himself. He has to be Othello.
Sure, method acting. Makes sense.
Now imagine if, right in the middle of a crucial scene, say, while he's strangling Desdemona, he's actively worrying about his tax audit,
Right.
or his dental appointment next Tuesday, or that embarrassing thing he said at a party 3 years ago.
The performance just falls apart. He breaks character.
It fails completely. And the source argues that we forget our past lives for the same reason Olivier forgets his taxes on stage. So we can focus entirely on the role of our current life without the crushing burden of 1,000 previous memories.
That actually makes a lot of sense. If I remembered being a king, or, I don't know, a murderer or a beggar in vivid detail, I probably couldn't function in my 9 to 5.
You'd be paralyzed by the baggage. The amnesia is a clean slate. It lets you get the work done without being distracted by who you used to be.
One man in his time plays many parts, as Shakespeare said.
Indeed. And you need to focus on the part you have right now.
Okay, so we have the theory. We forget, so we can focus. But the fascinating thing about the case files is that he claims these parts do bleed through. He did these things called vocational readings, where he told people what they should do for a living based on what they'd done centuries ago.
Yes, vocational karma. The idea that your talents aren't random, they're practiced skills from a forgotten past.
And some of these are just wild. I want to talk about the band uniform guy, David Greenwood, because this sounds like it's made up.
It really does, but it's a classic case in the archives. David was a 14-year-old boy living in rural Alabama. His sister asked Cayce for a reading because the kid had these terrible chronic digestive problems. The family was at a loss. Doctors couldn't fix it.
So they come for the stomachache, but they leave with a career advice column.
They got both. And they were connected. Cayce goes into his trance and identifies the boy's past life as Neil, a courtier in the court of Louis XIII and the XIV in France.
Wow, okay.
Now, Neil had two defining traits. First, he was a glutton. He ate rich, heavy foods at the king's table constantly.
Hence the stomach issues in Alabama in the 1900s.
Exactly, the physical echo of past excess. But Neil was also the master of the ropes. He was responsible for the king's wardrobe. He had an incredible eye for textiles, fashion, and materials.
So you've basically got a gluttonous fashionista.
In a nutshell. So the reading advised this 14-year-old boy to go into textiles. It predicted he would have a natural ability to dress a whole room full of people.
Did he?
He did. David eventually became a phenomenally successful salesman for band uniforms.
Oh, way.
Yeah. He traveled the country outfitting high school bands, and later, during the war, he ended up outfitting army officers. He used that specific talent-judging fabric and fit for large groups that he had apparently honed centuries prior in the French court.
That is startlingly specific. It's not just you're good at art, it's you're good at dressing groups of people in uniforms.
And regarding the stomach, he had to stay on a really Spartan diet his whole life. The reading said it was his lesson to learn the moderation he failed to learn back in France.
So the talent and the weakness came from the exact same source.
That's really interesting. There was another one, Grover Jansen. This was a college kid, right?
19 years old, totally lost, didn't know what to major in. Cayce told him that in a past life he was Agrilda, a conservationist in ancient Egypt, and also Elder Moss, a scout and agriculturist in North America.
So a guy who works with the land.
Right. The reading said he had an innate, almost supernatural ability to judge soils, nature, and the feathered tribe's birds. It told him to pursue conservation. Grover followed the advice. He joined the National Park Service and became a ranger naturalist.
And did he like it? Or was he just doing what the spooky sleeping man told him to do?
There's this beautiful quote from him years later. He wrote that in this job he found a spice he had never experienced before.
Like he'd reconnected with an old love. It wasn't just a job for him, it was a resumption of a long-term passion. He just felt at home.
Okay, those are the happy stories. Hey, you were a fashion designer, go sell uniforms. You like birds, go be a ranger. But the outline mentions a darker side to this, physical and emotional karma. And this is where Cayce gets a little, well, controversial.
Yes.
Yes.
This is the hard pill to swallow section of the files. Cayce had a maxim that appears again and again in the readings. All illness is sin.
Oof. Okay, wait a second. We have to stop there because to modern ears, that sounds terrible. It sounds like victim blaming. Oh, you have cancer. It must be your fault. That's a dangerous road to go down.
It absolutely sounds that way if you use the modern cultural definition of sin, which usually implies guilt and shame and divine judgment. But we have to clarify. Cayce was a biblical literalist. Remember, he used sin in the original Greek or Hebrew sense, often related to the word kata, which is an archery term.
An archery term.
It means missing the mark. An imbalance. He believed that physical illness often stemmed from a spiritual or attitudinal defect, or an imbalance, sometimes carried over from a past life. It wasn't about God judging you, it was about cause and effect. It's physics, basically.
Can you give me an example where that distinction actually matters? Because it still feels pretty harsh.
Take the case of Paul Durbin. He was a 34-year-old man suffering from multiple sclerosis. He was paralyzed, losing the use of his limbs. He went to Cayce for help.
And what did the reading say?
It was brutal. It traced his condition to hate and malice that he had held on to in a past incarnation. The reading said he was at war with himself, and that internal war was manifesting as his body literally attacking itself.
So could he be cured? Or was he just doomed to suffer for being a jerk 200 years ago?
Cayce gave him physical treatments, massages, appliances, and Durbin actually started to get better. He regained some movement. But the reading came with a strict warning. It said that unless Durbin underwent a change of heart, unless he let go of the hate and bitterness, the cure wouldn't stick.
He had to fix the root cause.
And he didn't. Durbin kept his bitterness. He got frustrated that the cure wasn't instant. He lashed out at people. And as he did, the physical improvements faded. He relapsed.
That is heavy.
The source material uses this as a really stark example that you can't just treat the body if the soul is still missing the mark.
But there's one more story in this section that really blew my mind, and honestly, it makes me angry on the subject's behalf. Stella Kirby. This sounds like a movie script, but a really tragic one.
It really does.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate example of relationship karma. Stella was a nurse. She was hired to care for an elderly man who was, well, repulsive is the only word.
Yeah.
He was senile, messy, abusive, and just physically disgusting to her.
But she took the job.
She needed the money, but she hated him. She felt physically sick every time she had to touch him. She went to Cayce, basically asking, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this assignment? Cayce revealed they had a deep, dark history. In ancient Egypt, he had been her son. But in a later life in the Middle East, he was a wealthy man, and she was in his seraglio, his harem.
Oh.
He had degraded her. He treated her like property, like an object.
Yeah.
So her revulsion in the present was a memory of that sexual slavery and degradation.
Okay, so this is where I struggle. If I were her, I'd run away. Why should she have to help him? He was the villain.
That's what she wanted to do. But Cayce told her, if you leave in disgust, the debt remains unpaid. You will just have to meet him again in another life to resolve this tension. He told her that her karmic lesson was that she had to learn to love him. She had to break the cycle of hate with forgiveness.
That sounds impossible and frankly unfair. To love someone who abused you in a past life and is abusive in this one, that's asking a lot.
It was asking everything. But Cayce insisted it was the only way out of the trap. And Stella decided to try. She consciously changed her attitude. She started treating him with genuine care and kindness, praying for the ability to see him as a soul rather than a monster. And the amazing thing is, the man changed.
He stopped being abusive.
He did. He began to follow her around with his eyes like a devoted dog. The aggression just melted away because she stopped feeding the dynamic with her own loathing.
She broke the loop.
She broke the loop. When he died, she was free. The source says the bond was resolved because she met hate with love.
Man, that puts a whole new perspective on your difficult boss or that terrible ex.
It certainly raises the question, are they just annoying or are they an assignment?
An assignment. I'm not sure if I like that or hate it. It puts a lot of responsibility on us. Now, speaking of assignments, we have to talk about Cayce himself. Did he ever talk about who he was, or was he exempt from this whole system?
No one is exempt in this framework. He discussed several past lives, but one of the most famous and most verifying was a man named John Bainbridge. Bainbridge was a rogue, a gambler, and a soldier in the American colonies. A jovial rolling stone with an eye for the ladies.
Not exactly the pious Sunday school teacher we started with.
Not at all. But Bainbridge had one redeeming moment. He was escaping a raid on a raft on the Ohio River. There was a woman on the raft. The conditions were freezing. Starvation was setting in. Bainbridge gave up his spot near the warmth and his food resources so the woman could survive. He died on that raft to save her.
Self-sacrifice.
Yes. And there's this incredible anecdote involving Cayce's son, Hugh Lynn. When Hugh Lynn was about 5 years old, completely out of the blue, he walks up to his father, offers him a cookie, and says, "Here, you can have the rest. You must still be awfully hungry."
Wait, what?
And Cayce is, totally confused. He asks him why. And the 5-year-old Hugh Lynn says, "You were real hungry then, weren't you, mister? On that raft."
Oh, come on. No way.
The implication, of course, being that the son, Hugh Lynn, was the reincarnation of the woman Bainbridge saved. They were back together, father and son, and the soul remembered the hunger.
That gives me chills. A 5-year-old with a cookie closing a karmic loop from the 1700s.
It's those little details that make the Cayce reading so sticky. It stops being abstract theology and becomes very, very personal.
But this leads us to a crucial point about how Cayce viewed all this. It's easy to hear these stories. David's stomach, Stella's abusive patient, think, oh, I'm doomed. I was a bad guy in France, so I have to suffer now. It sounds fatalistic.
Right. Is karma just a cosmic punishment machine?
Exactly. Can I change it, or is the script already written?
See, sources are very clear on this. Karma is not fatalistic. Cayce insisted on the concept of free will. He compared life to a prison term, sure, but he used the trustee system analogy.
The trustee system.
In the prison system of that time, if you were a trustee, you got privileges for good behavior. You could shorten your sentence. You could change your conditions. Cayce had a famous phrase, "Mind is the builder." No soul is doomed to pay debts forever. You can change your trajectory instantly, like Stella Kirby did, through a change in attitude.
So you're not just a victim of your past. You're actively writing the next chapter.
Exactly. The past provides the setting and the cast of characters, but you write the dialogue for this scene. You have total agency in the present moment.
So let's unpack this for the listener. We've covered a lot. The accidental discovery of reincarnation by a Christian literalist, the deep-sea diver, the band uniforms, the nurse breaking the cycle of hate. What is the actual utility of this? Why should a modern person care about these 100-year-old readings?
I think the takeaway from the Cayce files is that reincarnation, in this view, isn't about escapism. It's not about thinking, oh, I was Cleopatra, look how cool I am. It's a framework for understanding the why of your struggle.
It adds a layer of meaning to the mess.
It suggests that nothing is random. Your talent, your fear, your conflict, it's all data. It suggests we are all in a very long process of education. And like the diver, we might have forgotten the surface, but we are still trying to find the treasure down here in the murk. It turns suffering into a lesson rather than just bad luck.
And hopefully we can avoid the sharks while we're at it.
Ideally. Or at least learn how to tame them.
We've been swimming through the archives of Edgar Cayce today. It's a wild ride from 1923 Dayton to the courts of Louis XIV.
Indeed. It forces you to look at your life through a much, much wider lens.
Before we go, here's something to chew on. We talked about the Laurence Olivier analogy that we forget our past so we can play our current role. If that's true, if we are all actors in a play we don't fully remember auditioning for, take a close look at the people in your life who push your buttons the most, the ones who really, really annoy you.
The antagonists in your story.
Exactly. Ask yourself, are they just jerks? Or are they actually your oldest, most reliable scene partners who agreed to show up and hassle you just so you could finally get the lines right this time?
A provocative thought.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.